A millionaire takes his adopted daughter to meet her father, believing it will be an emotional moment for the family. The moment the old man looks at the girl, his face turns pale and his hands tremble. He recognizes in her the traits of the daughter he abandoned in the past, bringing to light a long-buried secret. Overcome with despair, he realizes that his past has come back to haunt him, and now there is no escape. If this story interests you, don't forget to subscribe to our channel. Tell us which city you're watching us from and we'll keep going. The afternoon sun bathed the imposing facade of the Muller mansion, its golden rays reflecting off the windows like a portent of the emotional turmoil that was about to unfold. Carlo Muller, a man in his early 30s, impeccably dressed in a navy blue suit, held the hand of little Anna, a girl with curious eyes and wavy brown hair as she climbed the steps to the main entrance. "It's okay, honey," Carlo whispered, feeling the girl's hand tighten around his. "Grandpa will love you." Anna nodded silently, her eyes roaming the grandeur of the house that surrounded her. For Carlo, this moment should have been one of pure joy. After months of adoption, he was finally bringing his daughter to meet the family. However, a persistent uneasiness accompanied him, as if something in the air announced an imminent change. The housekeeper, Diana, a gray-haired lady with a welcoming smile, opened the door before Carlo could even ring the bell. "Mr. Carlo, how lovely to see you," she exclaimed, her eyes immediately falling on the small figure beside him. "And this must be Anna. Welcome, my dear." Anna smiled shyly, partially hiding herself behind Carlo's leg. "Is Dad in the library?" Carlo asked, his voice betraying a slight tremor of anxiety. Diana nodded. "Yes, sir, he's waiting for you." Carlo took a deep breath, adjusted his tie with his free hand, and led Anna down the wide hallway, decorated with old paintings and period furniture. Each step echoed on the marble floor, amplifying the tension growing in his chest. When they reached the library door, Carlo hesitated for a moment. He looked at Anna, who was staring at him with a mixture of curiosity and apprehension. "Ready to meet, Grandpa?" he asked, forcing an encouraging smile. Anna nodded, squeezing Carlo's hand even tighter. With a determined movement, he opened the library door. The scent of old books and leather filled his senses, a familiar fragrance that always made him feel at home. In the center of the room, seated in a brown leather chair, was Erich Muller. The patriarch of the family looked up from the book he was reading, his stern face softening slightly as he saw his son. However, when his gaze fell on little Anna, something extraordinary happened. Erich's normally impassive face turned into a mask of shock and disbelief. His book slipped from his hands, falling to the floor with a thud. The old businessman's hands began to shake visibly, and his breathing became ragged and labored. "Dad?" Carlo called, alarmed by the unexpected reaction. "What's wrong? Are you feeling okay?" Erich didn't answer. His eyes, wide and watery, were fixed on Anna. He rose from the chair with difficulty, his legs suddenly feeling weak. "It can't be," Erich murmured, his voice barely audible. Carlo, confused and increasingly worried, let go of Anna's hand and approached his father. "Dad, what's going on? Why are you looking at Anna like that?" Erich finally looked away from the girl and looked at Carlo. There was a mix of emotions in his eyes that Carlo had never seen before: fear, guilt, sadness, and surprisingly, a glimmer of hope. "Carlo," Erich began, his voice shaking, "this girl, she's identical to your sister when she was that age." Carlo's world seemed to freeze in that instant. His father's words echoed in his mind, incomprehensible at first, then terrifyingly clear. "Sister," Carlo repeated in disbelief. "What sister? What are you talking about?" Erich staggered, leaning against the nearby desk. His face was pale and beads of sweat glistened on his forehead. "I never told you," he said, the words coming out thickly. I had a daughter before you were born. Her name was Mary." The shock of the revelation hit Carlo like a punch to the gut. He felt the blood drain from his face, his legs weakening. Anna, sensing the tension in the air, approached him and took his hand again, offering a silent comfort that she barely understood. How is this possible? Carlo managed to stammer. Why did I never know about this? What happened to her? Eric closed his eyes as if the memory was too painful to bear. She left. Many years ago, I never saw her again. The silence that followed was deafening. Carlo looked at Anna, then at his father, his mind spinning with the implications of this revelation. If Anna was so much like this sister he had never met, that meant... Father, Carlo said, his voice shaking, are you suggesting that Anna might be... Eric nodded slowly, unable to complete the sentence. She could be my granddaughter, Mary's daughter. In that moment, the world as Carlo knew it came crashing down. Everything he believed about, his family, his history, his very identity, was shaken to its foundations. And there, in the middle of the library that had always been a symbol of stability and tradition, he realized that his life was about to change forever. Anna, oblivious to the emotional earthquake she had just unleashed, looked from Carlo to Eric, her innocent eyes filled with questions she had yet to formulate. And in that look, Carlo saw not only the echo of a lost sister, but the beginning of a journey that would lead him to discover long-buried truths and secrets that threatened to destroy everything he had ever believed to be true. The clock on the library wall marked the passing of the minutes with a monotonous ticking, while a heavy silence hung over the three occupants of the room. Carlo remained motionless, his gaze alternating between his father Eric and little Anna, who was now absently playing with the hem of her dress, oblivious to the tension that permeated the air. How is this possible? Carlo finally broke the silence, his voice thick with disbelief and a hint of anger. How could you hide the existence of a sister from me for all these years? Eric sank further into his chair, seeming to age decades in a matter of minutes. His eyes, once steady and authoritative, were now filled with tears, revealing a vulnerability that Carlo had never imagined he would see in his father. I thought I was protecting you, Eric began, his voice shaking. Mary, she was so young when she left, only 16. I believed she had run away, that she didn't want to be part of this family anymore. Carlo felt a wave of nausea rise in his throat. Run away, or did you kick her out? The accusation hung in the air, heavy and painful. Eric closed his eyes as if trying to block out a particularly painful memory. No, son. I would never have thrown her out. She was my firstborn, my little star. Eric's voice cracked, and it took him a few moments to compose himself. One morning, she just wasn't here anymore. She just left a note saying she could no longer live by the rules of this house. Carlo felt his chest tighten. An image of a young girl scared and alone in the world formed in his mind. And you never looked for her, never tried to find her. Eric stood up with difficulty, walking to the window. His gaze was lost in the landscape of the garden outside, as if searching for answers in the ancient trees that surrounded the property. I searched, Carlo. For years I hired detectives. I searched every corner of this country, but it was as if she had vanished into thin air. He turned, looking at his son with eyes full of regret. Over time, the pain became unbearable. Your mother insisted that we had to move on, for you. Carlo felt a pang of guilt. All his life he had believed himself to be an only child, the beloved and pampered heir of the Mullers. Now he discovered that his mere existence had perhaps been a substitute for a lost daughter. Mom, Carlo murmured, a new wave of questions surging through his mind. Did she know all of this? Why didn't she ever tell me? Eric hesitated, and Carlo saw a flicker of something, fear, guilt, pass through his father's eyes. Your mother, Lara, suffered greatly with Mary's disappearance. She thought it would be better not to talk about it, so as not to reopen old wounds. Something about the way Eric spoke made Carlo suspicious. There was more to the story, he could sense it. But before he could press his father for more answers, a small tug on his sleeve distracted him. Anna looked at him with her big brown eyes, identical to Carlo's. Daddy, I'm hungry, she said softly. The girl's simple sentence brought Carlo back to immediate reality. He knelt down beside her, forcing a smile. Of course, dear. Let's have Diana prepare something for you, okay? As Carlo rose to call the housekeeper, Eric approached Anna, his steps hesitant. He knelt before the girl, ignoring the protest of his aging joints. "Hello, Anna," he said, his voice soft and shaky. I'm your grandfather, Eric." Anna looked at him curiously, without fear. "Hi, Grandpa," she replied with a small smile. Eric raised a trembling hand, almost touching the girl's face, but hesitated at the last moment. You look so much like her," he murmured, more to himself than to Anna. Carlo watched the scene with mixed emotions: anger, confusion, sadness, and surprisingly, a glimmer of hope. If Anna really was Mary's daughter, that meant her sister was alive somewhere. "Father," Carlo called, his voice firm, "we need to find out the truth. If Anna is really Mary's daughter, we need to find her." Eric stood up slowly, his eyes never leaving Anna's face. "Yes," he agreed, "but Carlo, you need to understand, if Mary is alive, and if she finds out her daughter is with us..." Carlo felt a shiver run down his spine. "What do you mean?" "Mary had reasons to hate us, son, reasons you don't know yet." Eric sighed deeply. "If she finds out about Anna, we don't know how she'll react." At that moment, as if the universe wanted to underline the gravity of the situation, the phone on Eric's desk rang, making everyone jump in surprise. With trembling hands, Eric answered it. "Hello?" His voice sounded uncertain. On the other end of the line, a cold, determined female voice spoke. "Hello, Dad. Long time no see." The color drained from Eric's face, and the phone nearly slipped from his hand. "Ma Mary," he stammered. Carlo felt his heart race. The sister he never knew, the woman who could be Anna's mother, was alive and apparently knew exactly where to find them. "Yes, it is I," the voice replied, a hint of bitterness evident in its tone. "I think it's time we had a family talk, don't you? After all, you have something that belongs to me." Carlo's blood ran cold. How did Mary know about Anna? What did she intend to do? And most importantly, what dark secrets from the past were about to come to light? While Eric tried in vain to formulate a coherent response, Carlo picked Anna up and hugged her protectively. He didn't know what the future held, but one thing he was sure of. He would do anything to protect this girl who in such a short time had become the center of his world. The clock on the wall continued its relentless ticking, marking the beginning of a new and tumultuous phase in the Muellers' lives. The secrets of the past, buried for so long, were about to resurface, threatening to destroy everything Carlo thought he knew about his family and himself. Meanwhile, Anna, innocent and oblivious to the whirlwind that was forming around her, rested, her head on Carlo's shoulder, her little eyes beginning to close with sleep. For her, this was still just a day of meeting new faces and places. But for the adults in the room, it was the beginning of a journey that would unearth painful truths, test family bonds, and perhaps offer a chance at redemption for long open wounds. Mary's voice continued to echo through the phone, each word heavy with years of hurt and resentment. Eric, pale and shaking, tried to calm her, promising explanations and asking for a chance to talk in person. Carlo, for his part, felt torn between his curiosity to meet this mysterious sister and the protective instinct that made him want to keep Anna away from all this drama. But deep down, he knew there was no way to escape. The ties of the past, ignored and denied for so long, were now pulling them inexorably towards a confrontation that would change their lives forever. As night fell over the Mueller mansion, bringing shadows that seemed to dance across the library walls, one thing became clear: nothing would ever be the same again. Secrets, lies, and long-hidden truths were about to come to light, and no one would emerge unscathed from this coming family storm. The next morning dawned grey over the Mueller mansion, as if the sky itself reflected the tension that hung over the family. Carlo had not slept, spending the night awake, his mind filled with unanswered questions and hypothetical scenarios about the imminent meeting with Mary. Sitting in the kitchen, an untouched cup of coffee in front of him, Carlo watched as Anna ate her breakfast. The girl seemed oblivious to the emotional storm brewing around her, focused on spreading jam on her toast with the dedication of a child. "Daddy, why are you sad?" Anna asked suddenly, looking up from her plate. Carlo forced a smile, trying to dispel the worry in his daughter's eyes. I'm not sad, dear, just thoughtful. Is it because of the girl on the phone? Anna's innocent question took Carlo by surprise. Did you hear the conversation yesterday? He questioned, feeling a lump form in his throat. Anna nodded, taking a bite of her toast before answering. A little. The voice sounded angry. Is she coming here? Carlo hesitated, unsure of how much to reveal. Yes, Anna. She's coming to visit us. In fact, she might be your mother. Anna's eyes widened, a mixture of confusion and curiosity shining in them. My mother? But you said I didn't have a mother. I know, honey. It's complicated. Carlo sighed, running, his hand through his hair. Sometimes adults discover things they didn't know before, and now we're trying to figure it all out. Before Anna could ask any more questions, Eric's deep voice echoed through the kitchen. She'll be here in an hour. Carlo turned to find his father standing in the doorway. Eric looked as if he had aged years overnight. Dark circles darkened his face, and his normally proud posture was hunched over with the weight of his worries. So soon? Carlo asked, feeling his heart race. I thought we'd have more time to prepare. Eric shook his head slowly. Mary was adamant. She wants to get this over with as soon as possible. He paused, looking at Anna with a mixture of affection and apprehension. Maybe it would be best to take Anna to spend the day with Diana. We don't know how this meeting will go. Carlo nodded, reluctantly agreeing. Despite his desire to shield Anna from any conflict, he knew he couldn't hide her forever. Anna, dear, how about spending some time with Diana today? She said she has some fun recipes to teach you. Anna's eyes lit up at the idea, momentarily forgetting the conversation about her possible mother. Can I make cookies? Of course, Carlo smiled, grateful for the child's innocence and enthusiasm. Go get ready and I'll take you to her, okay? As Anna ran excitedly to her room, Carlo turned to his father. What should we expect, Dad? How was she on the phone? Eric sighed heavily, sitting down at the table. Angry, hurt, determined. Mary has always been intense with her emotions, even as a child, and now, she has years of built-up resentment. Carlo felt a pang of guilt. All these years, he had lived a privileged life, oblivious to the suffering of a sister he had never even known existed. Did she mention anything about her motives, about why she ran away? A flash of pain crossed Eric's face. Not exactly, but she's made it clear that she has a lot to say. Carlo, there are things about our family, about the past, that you don't know. Things that we have kept hidden. His father's admission made Carlo feel as if the ground was opening up beneath his feet. What other secrets could there be, besides Mary's existence? Father, what are you trying to tell me? Before Eric could answer, the sound of the doorbell echoed through the house, making both men jump. Carlo looked at his watch. There were still 40 minutes left until the agreed time. She's early, Eric muttered, struggling to his feet. Carlo felt his heart race. The moment he had both feared and longed for had arrived. He would finally meet Mary, his lost sister, Anna's possible mother, the woman whose ghost had haunted his family for decades without him knowing. With hesitant steps, father and son made their way to the front door. Carlo could hear the distant sound of Anna humming in her room, completely oblivious to the drama that was about to unfold. Eric stopped in front of the door, his hand trembling slightly on the doorknob. He gave Carlo one last look as if seeking strength. Remember, son, no matter what happens here today, what matters is Anna's well-being. Carlo nodded, swallowing hard. With a determined movement, Eric opened the door. There, standing in the doorway, was Mary Muller. Carlo's first thought was how much she resembled Anna, the same intense brown eyes, the same shape of her face. But where Anna radiated innocence and joy, Mary exuded an aura of fierce determination and restrained hurt. Dressed in a sleek black suit, Mary looked ready for battle. Her eyes quickly scanned the interior of the house before settling on Eric. For a moment, father and daughter stared at each other in silence, decades of separation and resentment condensed in that look. "Hello, Dad," Mary finally spoke, her voice cold as ice. "It's been a while." Eric seemed to have lost the ability to speak. His hands were shaking visibly, and Carlo could see tears forming in the corners of his father's eyes. "Mary," Eric finally managed to say, his voice cracking. "Zephus, my daughter." Before Eric could take a step toward her, Mary held up a hand, stopping him. "No, don't you dare pretend you care now, not after all these years." Her gaze then turned to Carlo, and he felt as if he were being analyzed and judged. In a matter of seconds, "You must be Carlo," she said, a hint of bitterness in her voice. "The perfect son, the heir they always wanted." Carlo felt a rush of conflicting emotions: compassion, guilt, indignation. "Mary, I didn't even know you existed until yesterday." A humorless smile curved Mary's lips. "Of course you didn't know. Why would they tell you about their troubled daughter who was kicked out of the house?" "Expelled," Carlo repeated, looking from Mary to Eric. "Dad, you said she ran away." Eric seemed to have aged 10 years in the last few minutes. "It's complicated, son. There have been misunderstandings, rash decisions." "Misunderstandings?" Mary interrupted, her voice rising in pitch. "Is that what you call what you did? To me, to my mother?" Carlo felt his head spin. "Your mother? But our mother is... She's not my mother!" Mary exclaimed, her eyes flashing with anger. "My mother was Lisa, Eric's first wife, the woman he abandoned when he met his precious Lara." The shock of the revelation hit Carlo like a punch to the gut. He staggered, holding onto the wall, to keep from falling. Everything he thought he knew about his family, about his own history, was crumbling before his eyes. "That's why I'm here," Mary continued, her tone now more controlled but no less intense. "Not only to get my daughter back, but to expose all the lies and secrets this family has built up over the years." At this moment, the sound of light footsteps caught everyone's attention. Anna appeared at the top of the stairs, her wide eyes fixed on Mary. "Mommy," the girl called hesitantly. Mary's face instantly transformed. All the hardness and bitterness gave way to an expression of pure love and longing. Tears welled up in her eyes as she took a hesitant step toward the stairs. "Anna," she whispered, her voice shaking with emotion. "My little..." Carlo watched, his heart sinking as mother and daughter looked at each other for the first time in years. He knew this was just the beginning, that the secrets revealed today were just the tip of the iceberg, that Mary's arrival would not only bring the chance to reunite a fractured family, but also the potential to destroy everything he knew and loved. As Anna slowly descended the stairs, her small footsteps echoing in the tension of the room, Carlo found himself confronted with an inescapable truth. Life as he knew it was over, and what would come next was a mystery that frightened and intrigued him in equal measure. The silence that followed Anna and Mary's meeting was almost palpable. Little Anna hesitantly descended the last few steps of the staircase, her eyes fixed on the woman she had just called mother. Mary, for her part, seemed frozen in place, silent tears streaming down her face as she absorbed every detail of her daughter. Carlo felt a lump form in his throat. Despite all the confusion and anger he felt over the situation, he couldn't deny the obvious connection between mother and daughter. It was like looking at two versions of the same person, separated only by time. "Anna," Mary finally managed to say, her voice choked with emotion. "My love, you've grown so much." Anna, always curious and surprisingly perceptive for her age, took a few more steps toward Mary. "Are you really my mother?" Mary nodded, kneeling down to the girl's level. "Yes, dear, I'm your mother, and I'm so sorry we've been apart for so long." Carlo watched the scene with mixed emotions. Part of him wanted to intervene, to protect Anna from possible hurt, but another part recognized Mary's right to know her daughter. Eric, who had been watching everything in guilty silence until then, finally spoke up. Perhaps we should continue this conversation in the living room. We have a lot to discuss." Mary gave her father an icy look but nodded. "Yes, we do." As the group made their way to the living room, Carlo noticed how Anna kept close to him, even though her eyes never left Mary. It was clear that the girl was torn between curiosity about her newfound mother and the comfort of Carlo's familiar presence. Once in the living room, Eric took his usual armchair, looking aged and tired. Carlo and Anna sat on the sofa, with Mary choosing a chair directly across from her father. "So," Mary began, her voice thick with years of pent-up hurt. "Where do we start? With the years of lies, or maybe with the way you abandoned my mother?" Eric closed his eyes for a moment as if gathering strength. "Mary, I know I've made unforgivable mistakes, but you need to understand." "Understand?" Mary interrupted him, her voice rising in pitch. "Understand what exactly? How could you just dismiss us when a brilliant new opportunity presented itself?" Carlo, feeling completely lost, intervened. "Can you please explain from the beginning? I don't understand anything that's going on." Mary gave Carlo a look of disbelief. "You really know nothing? Nothing about your father's first family?" Carlo shook his head, feeling more and more like an outsider in his own family history. Mary sighed deeply before she began. 35 years ago, Eric Muller was a promising young businessman, married to my mother, Lisa. They were happy, or at least I thought they were. I was only 5 years old when everything changed." She paused, casting an accusing look at Eric before continuing. "That's when he met Lara, your mother, Carlo, a young, ambitious lawyer from an influential family. Suddenly, my mother and I weren't enough anymore. Within months, Eric filed for divorce and left us." Carlo felt as if the ground had disappeared beneath his feet. He looked at his father, searching for a denial, any sign that this was a terrible misunderstanding. But Eric just hung his head, shame evident in every line of his face. "Father?" Carlo whispered in disbelief. Is this true?" Eric nodded slowly. "Yes, son, it's true. I made terrible mistakes. Mistakes I've been paying for decades." Mary let out a bitter laugh. "Paying? You? While you built your empire and created your perfect new family, my mother struggled to support us. Do you know what happened to her, father? Do you know the fate you condemned us to?" Eric looked up, fear evident in his eyes. "Mary, please." "She died," Mary exclaimed, tears now streaming freely down her face. "She died working 2 jobs to support me because you decided we didn't need to be a part of your life anymore." The silence that followed was deafening. Carlo felt as if each word were a physical blow. The entire image he had of his father, the respectable patriarch, the successful businessman, was shattering before his eyes. Anna, sensing the tension in the air, clung tighter to Carlo. "Daddy," she whispered, "why is everyone so sad?" The innocence of Anna's question seemed to bring everyone back to reality. Carlo hugged her protectively, unsure of how to explain the complexity of the situation to a child. "It's complicated, honey," he replied softly. "Sometimes adults make mistakes that hurt other people, even without meaning to." Mary looked at Anna, her face softening momentarily. "Anna, my love, I know this is all very confusing for you, but I want you to know that no matter what happens, I love you more than anything in this world." Anna nodded shyly, still keeping close to Carlo. "Are you going to take me away?" The question hung in the air, charged with tension. Carlo felt his heart tighten, fearing the answer. Mary hesitated, clearly torn. "Anna, I came here to get you, yes, but I understand that this situation is complicated. You've built a life here with Carlo." She then turned to Carlo, her gaze a mixture of gratitude and resentment. "Thank you for taking care of her, but you must understand that she is my daughter." Carlo felt a whirlwind of emotions. The thought of losing Anna was unbearable, but he couldn't deny Mary's right either. Maybe we can find a solution that's good for Anna," he suggested hesitantly, "something that will allow her to keep in touch with all of us." Eric, who had been silent, finally spoke. "Mary, I know I have no right to ask anything of you, but please don't punish Anna for my mistakes. She deserves to have a family, her whole family." Mary looked from Eric to Carlo, then to Anna. It was clear that an internal battle was raging within her. "I didn't come here to create more conflict," she said finally. "I came to meet my daughter and to face the past. But I see that the situation is more complex than I imagined." She knelt in front of Anna, gently holding her hands. "Anna, my love, what do you want? Would you like to come live with me? Or would you prefer to stay here with Carlo?" Anna looked at Mary, then at Carlo, her little brow furrowed in concentration. I don't want to leave Daddy Carlo," she said finally. "But I want to meet you too, Mommy." Anna's answer, so honest and pure, seemed to dissipate some of the tension in the room. Mary smiled sadly, stroking her daughter's face. "I understand, dear, and I promise we'll find a way to make this work." Carlo felt a mixture of relief and apprehension. Can we establish regular visits, maybe share custody?" Mary nodded slowly. "It's a start, but we have much more to discuss. About the past, about the future, about everything." Eric stood up from his chair, looking like he had aged years in just one afternoon. "Mary, I know words can't take away what I've done, but I'm willing to do whatever it takes to try to make things right, to be the father I should have been." Mary stared at him for a long moment, years of hurt and abandonment reflected in her eyes. "It's too late for some things, Dad. But maybe it's not too late for Anna to have a grandfather." As the afternoon wore on, the Muller family, now larger and infinitely more complicated, began the difficult path of reconciliation. Painful truths had been revealed, old wounds reopened, but a faint hope of healing had also emerged. Carlo, watching Anna shyly interact with Mary, realized that his life would never be the same again. The bonds of the past, long ignored now, bound them together in ways he could never have imagined. And while the future remained uncertain, one thing was clear. Their love for Anna would be the guiding thread that would guide them through this emotional storm. As the sun began to set, casting golden shadows across the living room, the Muller family took their first tentative steps toward a future that was unknown, but potentially richer and more meaningful than any of them could have imagined. The days following Mary's arrival were an emotional roller coaster for everyone involved. The Muller mansion, once a bastion of tradition and apparent stability, was now seething with unresolved tensions and newfound truths. Carlo, still trying to process everything he had learned about his family, decided it was time to do some investigating of his own. He knew that despite the shocking revelations, there were still more secrets buried in the Muller family's past. One sunny morning, while Anna spent a few hours with Mary in the mansion's garden, Carlo headed to his father's study. The imposing room, filled with old books and mementos of a successful life in business, had always intimidated him as a child. Now he saw it with new eyes, no longer as a symbol of power, but as a possible vault of secrets. "Dad," Carlo called, knocking softly on the half-open door. "Can we talk?" Eric, who was sitting behind his desk, looked up from the papers he was examining. The patriarch seemed to have aged a decade in just a few days, the weight of recent revelations evident in every wrinkle on his face. "Sure, son. Come in," Eric replied, gesturing for Carlo to sit down. Carlo took his place at the table, breathing in the familiar scent of leather and old paper that he had always associated with his father. For a moment he remembered being a child, longing for moments like this, moments of intimacy with an often distant father. Now, that intimacy was tainted by the lies of the past. "Father, I need to know the whole truth," Carlo began, his voice steady despite the inner turmoil. "Not just about Mary and her mother, but about everything. I feel like I barely know my own story." Eric sighed deeply, leaning back in his chair. His eyes, once piercing and confident, now looked tired and filled with regret. "You're right to want to know, Carlo, and you deserve the truth," Eric began. "But I must warn you, some truths are painful. Are you prepared for that?" Carlo nodded, determined. "I am. I can't live with half-truths and secrets anymore, Father." Eric stood slowly, walking over to a bookshelf in the corner of the room. With deliberate movements, he removed several volumes, revealing a small safe built into the wall. Carlo watched intrigued as his father punched in a combination and opened the safe. From inside, Eric removed a carved wooden box, ancient and weathered. He brought it back to the table, placing it carefully between them. "This box," Eric began, his voice shaking, "contains the untold story of the Mullers, letters, photographs, documents, things I swore never to reveal." With hesitant hands, Eric opened the box. Carlo leaned forward, his heart racing as he glimpsed its contents. The first thing he saw was a photograph, yellowed with age. In it, a young Eric smiled beside a beautiful dark-haired woman holding a small child in her arms. "This is Lisa and Mary?" Carlo asked, carefully picking up the photo. Eric nodded, a sad smile playing on his lips. Yes, that picture was taken a few months before everything changed. Carlo examined the picture, noticing the sparkle in his father's eyes, the happiness evident on his young face. "You looked so happy. What really happened, Dad?" Eric closed his eyes for a moment, as if gathering his courage. "The truth is, Carlo, I was young and ambitious. When I met your mother, Lara, it wasn't just about attraction. She represented opportunity, connections, power, a path to the top that I craved." Carlo felt a lump form in his throat. "So, you just threw away your first family out of ambition?" "It wasn't that simple," Eric replied, the guilt evident in his voice. "I did fall in love with Lara, but it's also true that I saw in her a chance to achieve everything I'd ever dreamed of, and in my youthful arrogance, I convinced myself that I was doing the right thing." Carlo continued rummaging through the box, finding old letters. He began to read one of them, recognizing his father's handwriting. "Dear Lisa, I know my actions are unforgivable. What I did to you and our little Mary, there is no justification. I understand your anger, your hatred. I just ask that you know that despite everything, you two will always have a place in my heart." The letter continued, full of regret and promises never kept. Carlo felt tears form in his eyes. "Have you tried to make contact?" Eric nodded sadly. "Many times, but Lisa rightly didn't want to see me. Over time, I respected her decision and convinced myself that it was for the best." As Carlo continued to explore the contents of the box, another revelation struck him. Among the documents, he found legal papers detailing a substantial pension for Lisa and Mary. "Did you provide financial support for them?" Carlo asked, confused. But Mary said her mother had to work 2 jobs. Eric's face paled. "What? That's not possible. I set up an account for them, with generous monthly deposits. They should have been well taken care of financially." Carlo frowned, a suspicion beginning to form in his mind. "Father, who handled these financial arrangements for you?" Eric hesitated for a moment before answering. "Your mother. Lara volunteered to manage that delicate aspect of the situation." The silence that followed was deafening. The implications of this revelation hung heavy in the air. Carlo felt a wave of nausea as he considered the possibility that his own mother might have. "We need to talk to Mum," Carlo said finally, his voice shaking slightly. "Now." As if summoned by his words, the office door opened, revealing Lara Muller. Elegant as ever in her impeccable suit, she strode into the room with the confidence of someone accustomed to controlling every situation. "What do we need to talk about, dear?" Lara asked, her gaze flicking between Carlo and Eric, noticing the palpable tension in the air. Carlo stood up, holding the documents he had discovered. "Mum, what do you know about the financial support Dad arranged for Lisa and Mary?" Lara's smile faltered for a moment, almost imperceptibly. "Oh, that. It was so long ago, dear. Why are you digging up these old stories?" "Because, Mom," Carlo replied, his voice firm, "it seems the money never reached them, and you were responsible for managing those payments." The silence that followed was thick, laden with decades of secrets and lies. Lara looked at Eric, who was staring at her with a mixture of shock and disappointment. "Lara," Eric said, his voice barely above a whisper, "what did you do?" Lara straightened her shoulders, her face a mask of determination. "Whatever it, Shaduk, to protect this family, our family." Carlo felt as if the ground had disappeared beneath his feet. The implications of what his mother was admitting were devastating. Not only had she orchestrated Eric and Lisa's separation, but she had also ensured that Mary and her mother would be left destitute. "How could you?" Carlo asked, his voice shaking with anger and disappointment. "They were innocent." Lara lifted her chin defiantly. "Innocent? They threatened everything we've built, everything you have today, Carlo. I did what I had to do to ensure your future." Eric, who seemed to have aged years in a matter of minutes, finally found his voice. "Lara, you fooled me all these years, made me believe they were being taken care of." "I did what was best for us, Eric," Lara replied, her voice cool. "For the empire we built together. Don't play innocent. You knew deep down that it was best not to ask questions." The weight of these revelations hung over the room like a dark cloud. Carlo looked at his parents, two strangers he thought he knew so well. Their entire life, their entire identity, seemed built on a foundation of lies and betrayal. At that moment, as if the universe wanted to underscore the unfolding drama, the office door opened again. Mary walked in, holding Anna's hand. Her face paled as she took in the scene before her. The open box, the scattered documents, everyone's tense expressions. "What's going on here?" Mary asked, her voice shaking slightly. Carlo looked at his newfound sister, then at his adopted daughter, and finally at his parents. In that instant, he knew that nothing would ever be the same again. The secrets of the past, so carefully buried, for decades had finally come to light, and the consequences of those revelations were only just beginning to unfold. The Muller mansion, once a symbol of power and success, now seemed like an emotional battlefield. And at the center of this turmoil was Anna, innocent and oblivious to the complexities of the adult world, but inevitably affected by each revelation, each secret exposed. As the afternoon sun cast long shadows across the office windows, the Archie Muller family found themselves on a precipice. The past they thought they had left behind had returned with full force, threatening to destroy the fragile bonds that bound them together. And the question that hung in the air, unspoken but felt by all, was there a way back from this storm of truths and betrayals? The silence that followed Mary's entry into the office was thick, almost palpable. Anna, sensing the tension in the air, gripped Mary's hand tighter, her wide, confused eyes roaming the adults' faces. Carlo was the first to break the silence. "Mary," he began, his voice shaking, "I think we've discovered something you need to know." Lara, realizing the gravity of the situation, tried to intervene. "Carlo, dear, maybe this isn't the time." "No, Mom," Carlo interrupted her, his voice firm. "No more secrets, no more lies." Mary stepped forward, her eyes fixed on the papers spread out on the table. "What are these documents?" Eric, looking as if he had aged a decade in a matter of minutes, replied, "They're records, Mary. Records of a pension I had set up for you and your mother after our separation." Mary's eyes widened in shock and confusion. "Pension? But we never received any. Mom worked herself to exhaustion to support us." Carlo picked up one of the documents and handed it to Mary. According to these records, substantial payments were made monthly for years, but it appears the money never reached you. Mary looked over the document, her hands shaking slightly. Her emotions seemed to fluctuate between disbelief and growing anger. How is this possible?" All eyes turned to Lara, who stood straight, her face a mask of determination. "I did what had to be done," she declared, her voice cold, "to protect this family, our family." "Our family?" Mary repeated, her voice rising in pitch. "I was part of this family. My mother was part of this family before you came along." Anna, startled by the sudden outburst of emotions, began to cry silently. Carlo immediately knelt down beside her, trying to calm her down. "Shh, it's okay, honey," he murmured, hugging her. "The adults are just talking." Mary, noticing her daughter's discomfort, took a deep breath, trying to calm herself. "Anna, my love, why don't you go with Diana for a moment? Mommy needs to talk to the family." Reluctantly, Anna nodded, leaving the office hand in hand with the housekeeper who had been discreetly called. With Anna out of the room, the tension seemed to rise even more. Mary turned to Lara, her eyes flashing with suppressed anger. "You stole from us, not just our money but our chance at a decent life. Do you know how much my mother suffered? How much she sacrificed?" Lara lifted her chin defiantly. "I did what was necessary. You were a threat to everything we've built." "A threat?" Mary repeated in disbelief. "We were an abandoned child and... Woman, how could we be a threat?" Eric, who had remained silent, finally found his voice. "Lara," he said, his voice thick with disappointment, "how could you do this? I trusted you." Lara turned to her husband, her eyes shining with a mixture of determination and something that could be interpreted as regret. "Eric, everything I've done for us. For the empire we built together. Do you think we would have gotten where we are now if we had the weight of your past weighing us down?" Carlo, who had been watching the scene with a mixture of horror and fascination, could no longer contain himself. "Mum, are you listening to what you're saying? You've destroyed lives. You've lied to all of us for decades." "I protected you," Lara snapped, her composure finally beginning to crack. "You have no idea what the world is like out there, what it takes to get to the top and stay there. I made hard choices, yes, but they were necessary choices." Mary took a step toward Lara, her fists clenched at her sides. "Necessary? My mother died working 2 jobs, exhausted and broke, believing she'd been completely abandoned. And all. This time the money that could have changed our lives was, where? In her bank accounts." Lara didn't back down, meeting Mary's furious gaze. "The money was invested. In the company, in properties, in shares, all to secure the future of this family. This family," Mary spat the words, "is built on lies and betrayal." Eric, who seemed to have aged years in a matter of minutes, finally stood up from his chair. "Enough," he said, his voice tired but firm. "What's done is done. We can't change the past, but we can try to fix the future." He turned to Mary, his eyes filled with regret. "Daughter, I know that nothing I say can make up for the years of suffering you and your mother have endured. But if you will give me the chance, I will do everything in my power to try to make amends for the harm that has been done." Mary looked at her father, years of hurt and resentment reflected in her eyes. "And how do you propose to do that? Money won't bring my mother back. It won't erase years of struggle and deprivation." Eric nodded sadly. "You're right. But I can make sure you and Anna have everything you need from now on. I can try to be the father and grandfather I should have been all these years." Carlo, seeing an opportunity for reconciliation, intervened. "Mary, I know it's a lot to ask, but maybe we can try to rebuild something from here for Anna. She deserves to have a family, her whole family." Mary looked at her brother, then at her father, and finally at Lara. Her emotions seemed to be at war inside her. Anger, hurt, a glimmer of hope, and surprisingly a flash of compassion. "I don't know if I can forgive," she said finally. "I don't know if I'll ever be able to trust you completely, but for Anna, I'm willing to try." Lara, who had remained silent, took a hesitant step toward Mary. I know my actions are unforgivable," she began, her voice shaking slightly. "But if you'll give me the chance, I'd like to try to make up for the harm I've caused in some way." Mary stared at the woman who had caused her and her mother so much suffering. For a moment, everyone in the room held their breath, waiting for her reaction. "Don't expect me to call you mother," Mary said finally. "Don't expect me to forget or forgive easily, but for Anna's sake, I'm willing to try a civil relationship." The relief in the room was palpable. Although the wounds were still raw and the road ahead was long and difficult, there was a glimmer of hope. Eric approached Mary hesitantly. "Daughter, I know I have no right to ask this, but can I hug you?" Mary looked at her father, years of pent-up emotions shining in her eyes. Slowly, almost reluctantly, she nodded. The embrace was awkward at first, years of separation making the gesture awkward, but gradually father and daughter gave in to the emotion of the moment, silent tears streaming down both their faces. Carlo watched the scene, his own heart heavy with the revelations of the day. He knew that nothing would ever be the same again, that the image he had of his perfect family was irreparably shattered, but perhaps, from the ruins of that illusion, something stronger and truer could emerge. Lara stood a little away, her face a mask of conflicting emotions. Carlo could see the regret in her eyes, but also the determination that had always characterized his mother. He knew that the road to her redemption would be long and difficult. At that moment, as if she felt it, it was safe to return. Anna timidly entered the office. Her eyes scanned the scene. Her adoptive father Carlo, her biological mother Mary, the grandparents she barely knew, all with faces marked by tears and intense emotions. "Is everything okay now?" she asked innocently. Mary gently pulled away from Eric and knelt before her daughter. "Not yet, my love," she said softly, "but you will be, I promise." Carlo joined them, placing a hand on Anna's shoulder. "Sometimes families go through hard times," he explained, "but the important thing is that in the end we're all here, together, trying to do the right thing." Anna looked at the adults around, her expression serious beyond her years. "Can we be one big, happy family now?" The child's innocent question brought hesitant smiles to the adults' faces. It was a powerful reminder of what really mattered, of what was at stake. "Let's try, honey," Eric replied, his voice choked with emotion. "Let's all try." As the sun began to set, casting a golden light through the office windows, the Muller family, now larger, more complicated, but potentially stronger, took its first tentative steps toward an uncertain but possible future. The wounds of the past were still fresh, the lies and betrayals still weighed heavily on everyone. But there was also a spark of hope, a shared desire to make things right, to build something new and true from the ashes of the past. And at the center of it all was Anna, an innocent child whose love had the power to unite what had been broken, to heal what seemed irreparable. Her future, and the future of the entire Muller family, was yet to be written. The weeks that followed the revelations in the Muller mansion's study were a period of adjustment and tension for everyone involved. The routine of the household, once so predictable and orderly, was now in constant flux, with Mary making regular visits to spend time with Anne. Carlo watched with a mixture of relief and apprehension as his adopted daughter slowly grew closer to her birth mother. Anna, with the resilience typical of children, seemed to flourish with the additional attention, though she sometimes seemed confused about how to navigate her divided loyalties. One sunny afternoon, Carlo found Anna sitting alone on the garden swing, her little face wrinkled in a thoughtful expression that seemed far beyond her years. "Hey, princess," he called softly, sitting down beside her. "What's going through that little head of yours?" Anna swung her little legs in the air, her eyes fixed on a distant point. "Daddy," she began hesitantly, "is it wrong that I love Mommy Mary and still want to be with you?" Carlo's heart clenched at the question. He put his arm around the girl's shoulders, pulling her close. "Of course not, my love. There's nothing wrong with loving many people. Your heart is big enough for all of us." Anna nodded slowly, seeming to ponder her words. "But what if I hurt someone? What if Mommy Mary wants me to move in with her?" Carlo took a deep breath, searching for the right words. "Anna, listen. Your mother and I, we both love you more than anything in this world. And what we want most is for you to be happy. No matter where you live or who you spend the most time with, we will always be your family." The girl finally looked up at Carlo, her eyes shining with unshed tears. "Promise you won't abandon me." "Oh, darling." Carlo hugged her tightly, feeling his own tears threaten to fall. "I promise. Nothing in this world could make me leave you. Ever." On the other side of the garden, without Carlo and Anna noticing, Mary watched the scene. Her heart was divided between gratitude for the love Carlo had for her daughter and a pang of jealousy for the deep connection between them. Later that day, Mary sought out Carlo for a conversation they both knew was necessary, but had been avoiding. "Carlo," she began, her voice tense, "we need to discuss Anna's future." Carlo felt his stomach tighten, but he nodded. "Yeah, I think it's time." They sat on the porch, the scent of roses from the garden hanging in the air, contrasting with the seriousness of the conversation they were about to have. Asturam, I know how much you love Anna, Mary began, her hands fidgeting in her lap, and I'm forever grateful for everything you've done for her. But she's my daughter. I want to be an integral part of her life. Carlo closed his eyes for a moment, gathering his courage. I understand, Mary, and you have every right to want that, but Anna has been my daughter for the past few years. I can't just give her up. Mary nodded, tears shining in her eyes. I know, I'm not asking for that. In fact, I have a proposal. Carlo raised an eyebrow, curious. What kind of proposal? What if... Mary hesitated, as if testing her words. What if we shared custody? Anna could spend half her time with me and half with you. We could coordinate, make sure she has stability, that she doesn't miss anything important at school. The proposal hung in the air between them. Carlo felt a mixture of relief and apprehension. It was more than he had expected. But still, the idea of spending less time with Anna hurt. That could work, he said slowly. But we'd have to be very careful. Anna needs stability, routine. Mary nodded enthusiastically. Yes, of course. Could we work out a schedule, maybe? Alternate weeks, and for big events, birthdays, holidays, we could all be together. As they discussed the details, Carlo realized they were doing something that had seemed impossible just weeks ago. They were cooperating, putting Anna's needs above their own emotions and resentments. In the middle of their conversation, they were interrupted by Eric, who approached hesitantly. Sorry to interrupt, he said, his voice thick with emotion. I just wanted to say how proud I am of you both. The way you're handling all of this, putting Anna first, it's admirable. Carlo and Mary exchanged surprised looks. It was rare to see Eric express emotions so openly. Thank you, Dad, Carlo replied softly. Mary, after a moment's hesitation, added, That means a lot, coming from you. Eric cleared his throat, clearly uncomfortable with the vulnerability of the moment. Well, I've been thinking, I know I can't erase the past, but I'd like to do something for the future. I'd like to set up a trust for Anna, to make sure she has every opportunity possible in life. The offer took both Carlo and Mary by surprise. Dad, this is, Carlo began. Generous, Mary added, but it's not an attempt to buy your forgiveness or your affection, Eric interrupted, guessing her thoughts. It's simply something I want to do for my granddaughter. Something I should have done a long time ago for you, Mary. The silence that followed was thick with unspoken emotions. Years of hurt, regret, and hope seemed to hang in the air between them. Finally, Mary spoke, her voice shaking. Thank you, Dad. It means a lot to Anna, and to me. At that moment, as if drawn by the emotional intensity, Anna came running into the garden, her laughter echoing in the afternoon air. She stopped, abruptly, when she saw the three adults, her expression changing to one of curiosity. What's going on? She asked, looking from one face to the other. Carlo smiled, holding out his arms to her. Nothing much, Princess, just the family talking about grown-up things. Anna grimaced. Boring adult stuff? Mary laughed, the tension of the moment dissipating. Not all grown-up things are boring, you know. Sometimes they're about really important and special things. Like what? Anna asked, her curiosity piqued. Eric knelt down, getting to eye level with his granddaughter. How to ensure that you, my dear, have the best future possible. Anna looked at her grandfather, a serious expression on her little face. But I already have the best future. I have you. The simplicity and depth of Anna's statement struck a chord with all the adults. Amidst all the complications, disputes, and negotiations, this little girl had captured the essence of what really mattered. Carlo pulled Anna into a hug, feeling tears in his eyes. You're right, my love. You have us. All of us. Mary joined. In the embrace followed, after a moment's hesitation, by Eric. There in the garden of the Muller mansion, under the warm afternoon sun, 4 generations of a complicated, wounded but healing family came together. The road ahead would still be long and, without a doubt, full of challenges. There were deep wounds that would take time to fully heal, trust that would need to be slowly rebuilt. But in that moment, holding each other under the blue sky, there was hope. Lara, watching the scene from her second-story window, felt a complex mix of emotions. Regret for the past, fear for the future, but also a glimmer of hope. She knew her path to redemption would be the longest and most difficult, but seeing her family united below, she made a silent promise to do everything she could to fix what had been broken. As the sun began to set, casting golden hues over the garden, the Muller family took another step forward in their journey of healing and reconciliation. The bonds of the past, so long strained and nearly broken, slowly began to strengthen, weaving a new family tapestry, one that included every thread, even the most frayed and fragile. And at the center of it all was Anna, a beacon of unconditional love and hope, reminding everyone that even in the most difficult circumstances, love has the power to heal, unite, and transform. The months that followed brought a new routine for the Muller family. Anna divided her time between the mansion with Carlo and Mary's new home, adapting surprisingly well to the change. However, beneath the seemingly calm surface, undercurrents of tension and unspoken secrets still threatened the fragile peace they had achieved. One autumn afternoon, as the golden leaves gently fell in the mansion's garden, Carlo received an unexpected visitor. The sound of the doorbell echoed through the house, and upon opening the door he found himself face to face with a middle-aged man with a distinguished appearance and piercing eyes. "Good afternoon," the man greeted, his voice grave and formal. "My name is Victor Frisk. I'm a lawyer and, well, I have information that may be of great interest to your family." Carlo felt a chill run down his spine. Something in the lawyer's expression suggested that the news would not be pleasant. "Please come in," he said, leading Victor into the living room. Minutes later, with Eric, Lara, and Mary, who was visiting Anna, gathered together, Victor began to explain the reason for his visit. "I was recently approached by a client who wishes to remain anonymous for the time being," he began, his tone carefully neutral. "This client possesses information and documents that could significantly affect the legal and financial status of the Muller family." Eric leaned forward, his expression tense. "What kind of information?" Victor hesitated for a moment before continuing. "Documents suggesting that the initial acquisition of the Muller company nearly 4 decades ago may not have been entirely legal." The silence that followed was deafening. Carlo looked at his parents, noticing how they had both paled. "That's absurd," Lara finally spoke, her voice shaking slightly. "The company was built with hard work and legitimate investment." Victor nodded understandingly. "I understand your position, Ms. Muller. However, the documents in my client's possession suggest irregularities in the initial contracts, possibly bribery and bid rigging." Eric stood up abruptly, his face a mask of fury and fear. "Who is this client of yours? What does he want?" "As I said, he wishes to remain anonymous for now," Victor replied calmly. "As for what he wants, well, he's willing to negotiate." Mary, who had remained silent until then, finally spoke. "This is blackmail, isn't it?" Victor adjusted his tie, clearly uncomfortable. "I prefer to think of this as an opportunity to resolve a potentially damaging situation in a discreet manner." Carlo felt his head spin. The entire Muller empire, everything he had known and believed in, seemed to be crumbling before his eyes. "What if we refuse to negotiate?" he asked. "In that case," Victor replied gravely, "my client will have no choice but to make this information public. The consequences, as you can imagine, would be severe." Lara let out a muffled sob, covering her face with her hands. Eric seemed to have aged years in a matter of minutes. "How much time do we have to decide?" Eric asked, his voice hoarse. "My client is willing to give you a week to consider your options," Victor replied, standing up. "I will contact you again to hear your decision." After the lawyer left, the family remained in a tense silence. It was Mary who finally broke it. "Did you know that?" she asked, looking directly at Eric and Lara. "Did you know that the company was built on corruption?" Eric sank into his chair, looking defeated. Mary, you have to understand. These were different times. Everyone did. No, Carlo interrupted, his voice shaking with anger and disappointment. Don't try to justify this. Have you built this whole thing, our entire lives, on lies? Lara stood, her eyes shining with a mixture of desperation and determination. We did what was necessary to secure a future for our family. Don't you understand, Carlo? The business world is ruthless. Sometimes you have to bend a few rules to survive. Mary let out a bitter laugh. Bend the rules? You've built an empire based on corruption and lies. And that's why you abandoned my mother and me, because we were an inconvenient reminder of a less profitable life. The silence that followed was deafening. Eric and Lara exchanged looks filled with guilt and unspoken secrets. There's more, isn't there? Carlo pressed, sensing that there were still truths left unrevealed. What else are you hiding? Eric took a deep breath, seeming to make a difficult decision. Carlo, there's something you need to know, something that should have been told a long time ago. Lara stepped forward, grabbing her husband's arm. Eric, no, please. But Eric ignored her, his eyes fixed on Carlo. Son, the truth is, I'm not your biological father. Carlo's world seemed to fall apart completely. He staggered, holding onto the wall to keep from falling. What? How is this possible? Lara, tears streaming down her face, began speaking quickly. It was before we were married. I had an affair. When I found out I was pregnant, Eric, he accepted you as his son. We decided never to tell the truth. Mary watched the scene with a mixture of shock and a strange sense of validation. The entire image of the perfect Muller family was crumbling before her eyes. Carlo looked at his parents, or rather the people he had always believed were his parents, with a mixture of anger, pain, and confusion. Who is my biological father? He asked, his voice barely a whisper. Lara hesitated, exchanging a look with Eric before answering. His name is Lucas Godot. He was Eric's partner in the early days of the firm. The revelation hung in the air, heavy with implications. Carlo felt as if the ground had disappeared from beneath his feet. His entire identity, everything he believed about himself and his family, was being shattered. At that moment, as if the universe wanted to underline the emotional chaos of the scene, Anna entered the room, her eyes wide with confusion at seeing the adults in such a state of agitation. What's going on? She asked innocently. Why is everyone sad? The silence that followed was heavy, each adult struggling to find words that could explain the complexity of the situation to a child. It was Mary who finally approached Anna, kneeling down to be at eye level with her daughter. Honey, sometimes families learn things about the past that are hard to understand, but the most important thing is that no matter what happens, we all love you very much. Carlo, still stunned by the revelations, found the strength to join Mary and Anna. Your mother is right, Princess. We are just dealing with some complicated adult things. Anna looked from one face to the other, her expression serious beyond her years. But we'll still be a family, won't we? The child's innocent question struck everyone like a bolt of lightning. Amidst the chaos of revelations and secrets, Anna's simple and pure concern brought them back to what really mattered. Eric, looking like he had aged a decade in a matter of minutes, approached the group. Yes, Anna, no matter what happens, we will always be a family. Maybe not in the way we thought, but a family nonetheless. As the sun set outside, casting long shadows across the room, the Muller family faced an uncertain future. The secrets of their past had been exposed, threatening to destroy everything they had built. But here, gathered around Anna, there was also a faint hope. The road ahead would be difficult. There would be legal consequences to face, painful truths to process, relationships to rebuild. But in that moment, united by their love for Anna and their determination to weather the storm together, they took the first tentative step toward an unknown but potentially more authentic and meaningful future. The revelations of that day had shaken the foundations of the Muller family. But perhaps, from the ruins of what they believed to be Something new could emerge, something stronger and truer. The challenge now was to navigate these turbulent waters, not only for Anna's sake, but for each of them, facing the consequences of decades of secrets and lies, and trying to forge a new path based on honesty and forgiveness. The days following the bombshell revelations were a whirlwind of emotions and difficult decisions for the Muller family. The mansion, once a symbol of power and stability, now felt suffocating, every room weighed down by newly revealed secrets. Carlo, still struggling to process the truth about his parentage, spent hours locked in his old bedroom, going through old family albums and questioning every memory of his childhood. The photographs that had once brought him comfort now seemed to mock him, every smile hiding lies that had lasted decades. One particularly tense morning, he finally confronted Lara, his voice shaking with suppressed emotion. "Why, Mother? Why keep up this lie for so long?" Lara, sitting on the edge of the bed, seemed to have aged years in just a few days. "Carlo, my son, you have to understand that back then, a scandal like that would have destroyed everything. Eric, he loved me so much that he accepted you as his own son. We thought we were protecting you." Carlo let out a bitter laugh. "Protecting me? Or protecting the family's reputation? The precious Muller name?" "Both," Lara admitted, tears streaming silently down her face. "But mostly, you, Carlo, you've always been our world." Meanwhile, back at the office, Eric was battling his own demons. Hunched over piles of old documents, he desperately tried to find a way out of the threat of blackmail that hung over them. Mary, who had decided to stay at the mansion to help deal with the crisis, entered the office silently. "Any progress?" she asked, her voice a mixture of concern and still unresolved resentment. Eric looked up, the weariness evident in every line of his face. "Not really. These contracts, there are so many layers of, well, irregularities. We were so desperate to get the company off the ground that—" "Who decided the rules didn't apply to you?" Mary finished, her voice sharp. Eric nodded slowly, shame evident in his eyes. "We were young, ambitious. We thought we were just rushing things. We didn't realize the long-term consequences." Mary approached the table, picking up one of the documents. Her eyes widened as she read the contents. This is serious, Father. If this becomes public—" "I know," Eric interrupted, his voice breaking. "Everything we've worked for, everything we've built, it's going to fall apart." The silence that followed was heavy, laden with decades of secrets and regrets. At that moment, Anna ran into the office, her childish energy contrasting drastically with the gloomy atmosphere. "Grandpa, Mommy, look what I drew." Mary and Eric exchanged quick glances before turning back to the girl, forcing smiles onto their worried faces. "How lovely, dear," Mary praised, picking up the colorful drawing. It was an innocent depiction of the entire family, including Carlo, Mary, Eric, Lara, and even Diana, all holding hands beneath a large, smiling sun. The innocence of Anna's drawing hit Eric like a punch to the gut. Everything they had done, all the lies and ploys, had supposedly been to protect their family. But looking at his granddaughter's drawing, he wondered if they had actually put the most precious thing they had at risk. "Anna, my love," Eric called softly. "Come here." The girl came closer and Eric picked her up, ignoring the protest from her aging back. "You know Grandpa loves you very much, don't you?" Anna nodded, smiling. "I love you too, Grandpa." Eric felt tears forming in his eyes. "Anna, sometimes adults make mistakes, big mistakes, but I want you to know that no matter what happens, we will always love you and care for you." Mary watched the scene with a lump in her throat. Despite all the anger and resentment she still felt, she couldn't deny the genuine love Eric had for Anna. Later that day, the family gathered in the living room. Attorney Victor Frisk had called, demanding an answer about his mysterious client's proposal. "What are we going to do?" Carlo asked, his voice thick with emotional fatigue. Eric looked at each family member before speaking. "Diasim, I think we need to face this head-on. No more lies, no more hiding." Lara let out a shaky breath. "Eric, are you sure? This could mean—" "I know," he interrupted her gently. "It might mean losing everything, but look at us. Look at what... These secrets have already cost our family." Mary, who had remained silent until then, finally spoke up. What if there was a way to fix this? Not just deal with the blackmail, but actually make things right. All eyes turned to her, curious. "What do you mean?" Carlo asked. Mary took a deep breath before continuing. "What if we used the company's resources to actually make a difference? Repair some of the damage that's been done over the years? Maybe we could turn something built on lies into something genuinely good." The proposal hung in the air, full of possibilities and challenges. Eric was the first to react, a small smile forming on his tired face. "You know, Mary, you were always the wisest of us all, even as a child." Lara nodded slowly, tears in her eyes. "We could create foundations, relief programs, use our influence for causes that really matter." Carlo, who had remained skeptical throughout the conversation, finally spoke. "It won't be easy. There will be legal, financial consequences. But it's worth a try," Mary added. "For Anna, for ourselves, for a chance to really make a difference." At that moment, as if she felt the importance of the decision being made, Anna entered the room carrying her drawing. She looked at the serious faces of the adults, their expressions curious. "Is everything okay?" she asked innocently. Carlo knelt down beside her, picking up the drawing. "It is, Princess. In fact, I think things are going to get even better." Eric stood, his posture straighter than it had been in days. "I'll call Victor. Let's face this head on and do what's right." As Eric made the call, the rest of the family sat in the living room, a silence filled with anticipation, and for the first time in days, hope. Lara approached Mary hesitantly. "Mary, I know I don't deserve your forgiveness, but I want you to know that I'm truly sorry for everything." Mary looked at the woman she had long considered an enemy. She saw the genuine regret in her eyes, the pain of decades of secrets. "Forgiveness takes time, Lara, but I'm willing to try." Carlo, watching the scene, felt a wave of emotion hit him. Despite everything, despite the lies and betrayals, here they were united, facing the future together. Eric returned to the room, his face a mixture of determination and apprehension. "It's done. Tomorrow we'll meet with Victor and his client. We'll lay all our cards on the table and face the consequences." Anna, feeling the tension in the air, hugged Carlo's leg. "It's going to be okay, isn't it, Daddy?" Carlo picked her up, looking into his daughter's eyes. The child that, regardless of blood or DNA, he loved more than anything in the world. "Yes, you will, my love. It may not be easy, but we will face this together, as a family." As the sun set outside, casting a golden glow through the mansion's windows, the Muller family found themselves facing an uncertain but possible future. The secrets of the past had been exposed, the lies unmasked. But from the ashes of their former selves, a new family was emerging, one built on honesty, forgiveness, and a genuine desire to make a difference. The road ahead would be difficult, filled with legal, financial, and emotional challenges. But for the first time in decades, they would face these challenges together, united not by lies and appearances, but by genuine bonds of love and a shared desire for redemption. As night fell over the Muller mansion, a sense of peace, however fragile, hung in the air. Tomorrow would bring its own challenges, but for now, wrapped in the warmth of family love and the promise of a new beginning, they found a moment of true connection, a glimpse of what they could become if they continued on this path of truth and reconciliation. Dawn broke at the Muller mansion, bringing with it not only a new day but the promise of a new beginning. The family gathered in the dining room, their breakfast barely eaten before them, the tension palpable in the air. In a few hours, they would face Victor Frisk and his mysterious client, ready to face the consequences of decades of secrets and bad decisions. Carlo, with dark circles under his eyes, testifying to a bad night's sleep, was the first to break the silence. "Is everyone ready for this?" Eric nodded gravely, his hand finding Lara's under the table. "It's time we face our truth, no matter the cost." Mary, who had spent the night at the mansion to be present at this crucial moment, looked at Anna, who was happily eating her cereal, oblivious to the gravity of the situation. "What are we going to do with Anna during the meeting?" "Diana will stay with her in the garden," Lara replied softly. "We thought it best to keep her away from, well, whatever happens." The sound of the doorbell echoed through the house, making everyone jump. It was time. Victor Frisk walked in, his face a mask of professionalism. Behind him, to everyone's surprise, came an elderly man, leaning on a cane, his eyes tired but determined. "Lucas?" Eric exclaimed, recognizing his former partner and Carlo's biological father. The man nodded gravely. "Hello, Eric, Lara. It's been a long time." Carlo felt his heart race as he saw the man who, until a few days ago, he had not known was his real father. His hands shook slightly as he stood up. "Mr. Godot, Lucas held up a hand, gently stopping him. "Carlo, I know this must be a shock to you. Believe me, it wasn't easy for me to make this decision either." Victor cleared his throat, getting everyone's attention. "Gentlemen, ladies, I suggest we sit down. We have much to discuss." In the minutes that followed, Lucas revealed his story. How he had found out about Carlo years ago, but had respected Lara and Eric's decision to raise him as their own. How he had watched from afar as the Mueller empire had grown, built on the foundations of the businesses he had helped start. "I didn't come here for revenge," Lucas explained, his voice tired but firm. "I came because at the end of my life, I realized I couldn't let these secrets die with me. Carlo deserves to know the truth about his origins, and the world deserves to know the truth about how the Mueller empire was really built." Eric, his face a mask of guilt and regret, spoke. "Lucas, I know there is no apology sufficient for what we did, but we are willing to face the consequences, to do whatever it takes to right our wrongs." Mary, who had been watching the scene with a mixture of fascination and apprehension, interjected, "What about the proposal we discussed yesterday, about using the company's resources to do good?" Lucas's eyes sparkled with interest. "What kind of proposal would that be?" Over the next few minutes, the Mueller family, along with Victor and Lucas, discussed the idea of transforming the company. They talked about creating charitable foundations, investing in social and environmental projects, and using their influence for causes that really mattered. "It won't be easy," Victor warned. "There will be investigations, possibly lawsuits. The family's reputation will suffer. But it's the right thing to do," Carlo said, his voice steady for the first time since the revelations began. "For too long we've been living a lie. It's time to use our resources to make a real difference." Lucas looked at the son he had never known, a mixture of pride and sadness in his eyes. "You know, Carlo, I see a lot of myself in you. The determination, the desire to do the right thing. Maybe it's not too late for us either." Lara, who had remained silent until then, spoke softly. "Lucas, I know I have no right to ask this, but would you consider being a part of Carlo's life now, of all of our lives?" The question hung in the air, laden with decades of regrets and unrealized possibilities. Lucas looked at every face in the room before answering, "If you'll have me, yes. I'd love to meet my son and my granddaughter." As if summoned by his words, Anna rushed into the room, followed by a panting Diana. "Sorry, gentlemen. She escaped when I went to get water." Anna stopped, looking curiously at Lucas. "Who are you?" A tense silence fell over the room. Carlo knelt beside his daughter, his voice gentle. "Anna, honey, this is your other grandfather, Daddy's father." Anna's eyes widened with excitement. "Another grandpa? Yay, now I have 3. Anna's innocence and joy broke the tension in the room. Nervous laughter echoed, and even Victor couldn't help but smile. In the days and weeks that followed, the Mueller family faced a series of challenges. There were investigations, as Victor had predicted. The press had a field day with revelations about the company's origins. There was criticism, skepticism, and in some circles, ostracism. But there were also positive surprises. Many applauded the family's decision to come forward and seek redemption. New charitable and social investment initiatives were met with enthusiasm. Slowly, the Muller name began to be associated not just with past scandals, but with a genuine commitment to change. Carlo and Lucas began to build a relationship, decades late but no less meaningful. Their conversations, initially awkward and full of awkward pauses, gradually became more natural, filled with shared stories and plans for the future. Mary, seeing the transformation in her family, decided to move closer to the mansion. She and Carlo established a co-parenting routine that, while not always perfect, put Anna's well-being first. Eric and Lara, facing the consequences of their past actions, found new depth in their relationship. The weight of secrets had been lifted, and in their place grew a stronger, more honest partnership. A year after that fateful meeting, the Muller family gathered again at the mansion. This time, it was not to face accusations or reveal secrets, but to celebrate. Anna was turning another year older, and the house was decorated for a party. In the garden, under the same sky that had witnessed so many changes, the family gathered. Carlo watched with a full heart as Anna ran from one grandfather to another, from Eric to Lucas, both competing for his attention with gifts and treats. Mary approached Carlo, a soft smile on her lips. "Who would have thought, huh? A year. Ergo, we could barely be in the same room." Carlo nodded thoughtfully. "It's amazing how things change, how we change." Lara and Eric joined them, their faces showing the signs of the difficult year, but also a new serenity. "You know," Eric began, his voice thick with emotion, "for years, I thought the Muller legacy was about money, power, influence. But looking at all of you now, I realize the real legacy is here, in the family we built, in the mistakes we admitted, in the redemption we sought together." Lara took her husband's hand, tears shining in her eyes. "And on the chance that we can do better from now on." At that moment, Anna ran up to them, her face lit up with joy. "Let's sing happy birthday. Grandpa Lucas said he has a surprise for me." As the family gathered around the cake, their voices joining in the familiar song, Carlo felt a wave of gratitude wash over him. The road had been difficult, full of painful revelations and inconvenient truths, but here they were, united not by lies or obligations, but by choice, by love. The candle flames danced, reflecting off the smiling faces around the table. And in that instant, Carlo knew for sure the bonds of the past, so long a source of pain and secrets, had been transformed. They were now the foundation on which they would build a brighter, more honest future. Anna blew out the candles, her eyes shining with the promise of many happy years ahead. And as applause and laughter filled the air, the Muller family, in all their flawed and wonderful complexity, embraced their new beginning. The sun was setting over the horizon, casting golden hues over the mansion. A page had been turned, a new story was beginning. And together, bound by the bonds of love, truth, and redemption, they were ready to write it.